And we are at 10:05. We're going to talk about a 1-ton truck.
Just before we get going, Molly, just 1 second. And just for Wayne, before he says something, your mic is still on.
Do you hear that, Wayne? A 1-ton truck.
There you go. Good to go.
Good afternoon. I'm good to go. Good afternoon, Council. Thank you. Just here to present an RFD on a one-truck tender. Tendered out replacement of one of our older trucks. It's actually pretty old. It's a 2007. This one here, we were planning to replace it a couple of years ago. Just haven't done it till now. So what I did, right now we currently run 3 1-tons. So we got two of our newer ones. They're set up primarily to plow snow in the wintertime, our hamlets and subdivisions. Other activities in the summer include towing trailers, running around with a pressure washer skid. We use them for materials like hauling around delineators when we're doing delineator replacements, plowing, sanding of hamlets like I mentioned, and then also our tree and brush control in the wintertime. I did put out a tender here on July 9th for the replacement of this vehicle. I got 3 tenders in, went through the specifications. One tender was rejected because it didn't meet the specifications in the tender that we were looking for. The other 2 tenders were a little bit of a heavier dutier truck, and they were like respectively $35,000 and $41,000 over our budget. So we rejected them based on quite a bit over our budget, and they were also a little bit more heavier duty than what we require. Department decided to resubmit it out to Martin Chrysler and Harwood Ford in Brooks. Those 2 groups did not put us tender in initially, so I threw it out to them, asked them, gave them a couple weeks, can you guys provide us a tender back on these for this particular truck? They did submit back. Deadline there, we opened them both up. They both met the specifications, what we were looking for. And the lowest tender, of course, was from Martin Chrysler for $80,524. Looked at the price, kind of worried about the price of it a little bit. We did consult with a dealership out of town briefly. I did talk to them about our municipal discount on 1-tons. They were, Martin Chrysler and both Harwood Ford were in line with that. And also with the particular deck that we were looking for, they were also in line with that. So when I did the initial budgeting, I priced out for 2 1-tons we replaced this year. One for our sign truck, but I did price it out with a flat deck, just a normal flat deck at the time of budgeting. When we got into the winter time and got looking into it, how we were going to shuffle trucks around and use it, make it so it works best for operations, we determined at the time to get a truck with a shorter wheelbase, so getting rid of the full-size cab and a shorter cab. The biggest reason for that was for snow plowing. These larger trucks, these 1-tons with the crew cabs on them or the extended cabs, they are somewhat difficult to maneuver around in the wintertime for removing snow with a plow on the front of it. So we decided to go with a shorter truck, shorter wheelbase. That being said, the truck that we use for chipping right now, we decided to move one of our other trucks to use it as a chipping truck. Then I had to basically, rather than putting a flat deck on this new truck, we had to put on an aluminum box on it that we use for our operations. In a nutshell, it was about a $10,000 deck with the aluminum box that we needed on it now because we moved the other truck over into the chipping crew. It added about another $10,000 onto the price of the truck. So we were out $10,000 short on budget. So rather than $70,000 I had in budget, the truck was $84,000 or $80,000. So I'm short that $10,000. So just bringing it to council to approve the $10,524 to cover the overage, and it would come out of our vehicles, machinery, equipment fund and funds where the money is at for buying capital purchases like vehicles. So that's all I got. Questions? I guess that's Molly's job.
You can do it, Terry. Anne-Marie?
So it's after lunch, Terry. If we don't approve this, then what?
We would go status quo. I got my old chipping truck, probably stay as an old chipping crew, and we go through it. We survived for 2 or 3. The old chipping truck's on its last legs. We pushed it pretty far out there, so it's there. And we got to rebuild the wooden box and stuff on it. So I went as long as I dare go on it. It's getting a little bit of that one needs work on it. It's a safety concern now. So.
Wayne and Hubie and Tracy.
How much do you expect when you to recover off the old chipping truck and stuff? Or
like when we sell them, right? When we sell them?
when you sell it.
Oh boy. Auction sales, 3 to 5 maybe if we're lucky. I don't know, Wayne. It's our counselor, Wayne. It's a tough one. It's really weird because 3 years ago we got rid of three and anyway, we took 3 of our 3/4 tons, Dodge 3/4 tons. They're in rough shape. We took them to Anna auction and we got like $6,000 a piece for them. There was 2 of them that had engine problems in them. It's a hit and miss. It is a hit and miss. I'm guessing between 3 and 5, counselor.
Hubie?
So this is a 1-ton dually 4x4, right, Terry?
Yes.
How many miles are on the old one?
Oh, I didn't write that down there. 160-ish.
Okay.
I can look quickly.
Tracy?
My question, just curiosity more than anything, but why did Martin Chrysler and Harwood Ford not tender the original bid? Like it wasn't until after you approached them that they submitted a bid. Why wouldn't they do that prior when the tender first went out? Or do you know? I don't know.
So these 1-tons, they're 1-tons, and some of you may be familiar with it. They come out as a 350 series, which is a 1-ton. Then you got a 450 series, it's a 1.25 tons, and then you have the 550 series of 1-tons, which is a 1.5 tons. And you'll see that. To be honest with you, there's only 2 manufacturers that will build a 550 series, and that's Ford and Dodge. I believe, because when I advertise it as a 1.5 ton truck. I think there might have been some confusion I was thinking a bigger truck on it. They did not go and look at the specs. So what I did is I took the specs of the 5500 series 1-ton and used those specs in the specifications. I asked them, did you actually go and look at the specifications of the vehicle? If they would have done that, at that time they would have realized it was a 5500. And I talked to both of them, and that was the reason they gave me. They did provide us a quote on the other 1-ton, which would be a 1-ton or 3500 series. So I didn't want to put. Does that make sense? Like some people will know the difference between the 350, 450, and the 550 1-ton. Same frame, same chassis. It's just the 5500s are a lot more heavier duty truck, which we like here to be able to pull around our heavier trailers. And then, of course, we use it for snow plowing. A heavier front end, we're able to put on the chips and sands on the back, the sander and the chips on it. We can haul about a 1/2 ton more, which is about 1,000 pounds more typically than a 350 truck. I believe that's what it was. A little bit of confusion on that, Tracy, because I felt bad about it too. As soon as I explained it to them, they apologized, and then I let them put in a quote again. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's great that local, right? If we can remain local at all, as much as possible, that's great. It just, I was just curious why they wouldn't have originally, if they come up with a product that we can use. So thank you.
Yeah, 143,000 kilometers.
Mark, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Terry has said. we ran into some of these issues before with some of the half-ton fleet and stuff, and the specifications that what's a super cab on a truck these days versus an extended cab versus a quad cab. Between GM, Dodge, and Ford and Toyota and all of them, they all refer to them differently. So we struggle to come up with the specifications that they understand from their manufacturer's line of business, and to stay current with how they're changing things in their business lines is difficult for us as well. As Terry said, some of them will call it a 350, some of them will call it a 3500, some of them will call it a 5500, some of them will call it a 550. And same with the quad cab, which is a 4-door, but it's not a full 4-door. It's half of a rear door and then a full front size door. It's an interesting thing, and it's not a line of business that we're really into to understand from the manufacturer side, which Enterprise has helped us with because they get access direct to those specifications. But to try to line it up between all the manufacturers is quite challenging, which is why Terry ran into this situation here. So we try to do our best. We try to do our consults with them, and still we have some hurdles to cross. But I just wanted to contribute that to the conversation.
Anne-Marie, Kelly, I'll make the motion to approve the additional funding. Kelly?
I wondered how or why we budgeted so low, 35,000 buy a half ton anymore. How did we budget so low for that?
So when I think I kind of mentioned it, Councillor or when I got quotes on it from last summer, and for that truck with a flat deck, it is $70,000. It's just because I changed the deck configuration this winter just to accommodate, just to move our fleet around so it worked a little bit better for us. I've honestly, when I've done this stuff, I rarely am low because usually I give myself a little bit of room above it, but I got stung twice this year. And I did. So a little bit, things have gone up a little bit in price there too. And I got to take a little bit more time and be more thorough on getting a better price. I take pride in being a little bit lower, having a little bit room to work with. And also, it's nice like that too. I don't like being under budget. And I think on vehicles, I'm rarely under, usually pretty close. So last fall, a little bit more thought and time to be in it, to be a little bit closer. So I apologize for that. So
we'll keep track for you, Terry. That's no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, Anne-Marie has made a motion to approve this. So Terry, just a question, 143,000 clicks is just getting broken in at our place. So this is hard kilometers, obviously, and different sort of work in a bigger truck.
Yeah, that's correct. It's the age on it too, a little bit. So it is the deck's getting really rusted out on it. We try to do our best to shrink things down and use it a little bit more. There again too, the older truck that I bought, it's probably going to be moved over to the chipping crew, so the mileage will go down on it a bit more too. So it's not trucks that we drive off a lot. We just try to utilize them. My biggest concern isn't much like when we had the discussion with the plow trucks, is have pretty good equipment in the wintertime for snow removal. Those are things there where you want something very reliable. There's nothing more stressful than having a whole pile of snow out there and trying to move it. The old truck, it would not be able to work for snow plowing. I mean, all three of these trucks now, although we're just running 2 sanders and plows, they'll all have the ability to take that equipment and run with it. So if we do get a one-ton that goes down if it goes down for repairs, we will be able to move the equipment over and still provide those 2 half tons to clear our Hamlet subdivisions and stuff like that too. So a little bit of redundancy in there too. So it just takes that stress off. It's not nice. Like that's half your fleet with 1 ton. If a 1 ton goes down, that's half your fleet, especially if it's something major. You're down, it could be down for a week or two. And that's a little bit of stress and trying to get everything cleared out there too. So a little bit of redundancy in the back of our mind too. So, and we'll get 10 years out of these trucks quite easy or more. So we try to look after them, we will easily. So.
Thank you for that. All right, we'll call the question that on the tender. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
All right, now we are at the proposed changes to oil and gas assessments, and I hope I was able over noon hour to print off what Kevin has put together, and so we'll, Kevin, I'll just maybe get you to address this, or you just sort of put it into a compact form.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Reeve. So yesterday after our meeting with Michaela in Cypress County, she had asked for some of the details behind, in written format, of what our issues were, what our concerns were. So I listened to everything yesterday, and I put this together fairly quickly. We'll have to go through and proof it and make sure that it's in a go format, but it's a start. So basically, for the public's purposes, I put a number of whereas statements together. And we'll start off with the province of Alberta is proposing to alter oil and gas assessments for pipelines, wells, in addition to machinery and equipment, which they're not touching to any great degree. The province of Alberta provided 4 options for RMA to consider and County Council. We've been through those options. Option 1 through option 4 is essentially a shift of $7.2 million of taxes from the bottom end, which is a 332% increase on residential properties, because the minister and the premier have indicated that they don't want to see any additional tax increases to be able to fund this. To option 4, which is the top $11.6 million of municipal tax loss and a 475% increase on residential taxes. And as we know, that is absolutely nuts. I don't know where they came up with this. We've talked about it. I also put in that the scenarios for the wells and the pipelines depreciate as quick as 16 years, where they get down to 10%. And wells and pipelines are in operation 40 plus years right now. So I'm not sure the methodology on that. Oil and gas companies have lobbied the County of Newell in the past. When I came here in 2007, I heard loud and clear that that was what industry had asked for when you brought the paving tax in back in the day, and that was to put non-band roads, build roads for non-band status so that they can get their assets and products to market, which the County of Newell has done. So that came at a huge cost. We invested heavily into that over the years. I indicated that the Premier and the Municipal Affairs Minister doesn't want to see any tax increases to fund this political initiative. I also indicated in there that it was one of the first, if not the first, large-scale municipal political protests to a provincial politician that I've ever seen, and that was held on the 30th, where 3 members of council and myself attended at the legislature in Edmonton. I anticipate there was close to 100 people there. It was hard to count because everybody was all over, but the province has considered a submission from CAP, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, which is full of errors and omissions in my opinion, and that work needs to be validated and corrected specific to municipal districts and counties. The province has not completed a full and open, transparent review of oil and gas assessments. I know MLA Glasgow had mentioned that that's what they do every 20 years. I think that's a good thing. I just went on and looked at what the province of Saskatchewan has for SAMA. They have a detailed manual. To me, that's what the assessors need to look at, is they need to look at jurisdictions and how they're assessed. And I believe that exercise needs to take place, because if the assessments are out of line provincially and there's unfair competition, then they need to be adjusted based on that merit. But just to pick a number out of the sky because CAP says so is risky. The County of Newell has maintained roads in our jurisdiction for the 10 years previous that I ran the report for council, and we are 10% under average of municipal districts in county, 10% under average. And we have roads, probably one of the only municipalities to a non-banned status. So that to me, that to say that, we're inefficient, I'm showing that we're not. County Newell has one of the lowest non-residential mill rates, or at least in the top, underneath the top 20% in Alberta. So to assume that we can take another 30% hit when we're already 50 to 60% less than average is ludicrous. The County of Newell this year has $4 million left over that we put towards reserves and capital in 2020. That's after it's all said and done, and that's for close to $300 million of assets to replace over their useful life. County of Newell has less operating expenses today than it did in 2009. County of Newell collects less taxes from oil and gas than it did 10 years ago. The County of Newell assessment growth has only averaged 1% per year since 2009, and the rest of the province has averaged 3.5. So not only are they assuming that everything has been rosy here, it's been exactly the opposite. The changes that the province is being proposed is between 32 and 52%, and I middled it at 40, but it could be as bad as 52% of our assessment. County Newell reserves will be fully allocated over the 10-year capital plan if there's no way to replenish any more of them. So everybody has their eye on the reserves, well, they'll be gone. The County of Newell could cut all of our staff, and we will not be able to balance the effects of this political initiative. That means no more staff, period. Nobody to do services. That's how crazy it is. Under scenario 4, proposed by the province, County Newell would need to cut all staff and everything that we buy, plus find about another $1 million. And that's just not even feasible. The RMA has indicated that only the largest oil and gas companies will benefit from this political initiative, and I don't think that's fair to any municipal ratepayers, residential or the rest of oil and gas that are paying taxes. Substantial linear tax dollars are in arrears. Companies are starting to not pay them because there is difficulty collecting them, where municipalities can really only sue or seize assets, and that is not an easy process. The province of Alberta recommends that municipalities adopt a long-term operating and capital plan, which the County of Newell completes a 4-year operating budget and a 10-year capital plan. It is impossible to develop that plan without knowing all of the implications moving forward, which we don't know. The government of Alberta imposed a gag order, which I find crazy, on the RMA committee that worked on these 4 options. I don't understand why any committee should be gagged unless there's something that they don't want people to hear. And whereas I believe that the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs are on their way to killing rural Alberta from this non-residential tax cut for the big oil companies. And I hope that whatever we can do, we can get that reversed sooner than later. So I just suggested that a motion be made that the Premier of Alberta Municipal Affairs and our local MLA be notified the County of Newell is adamantly opposed all four options. There isn't one of them that's palatable for us. So that's what I put together in short order. I don't know if I missed anything. I didn't get into a lot of the charts or the scales. I just kept it kind of what Michaela asked for.
Thanks, Kevin. Clarence.
Certainly appreciate the summation, Kevin. It's certainly should explain why we're so frustrated. Just a couple things when we talk, the one where you're saying 40%, I would suggest we give the range. The one thing that I think is always important is that we have the numbers correct. And 40% isn't really anywhere there, so let's put the range in there instead of the 40. We don't know what the motivation is, and we say that the Premier and the Municipal Affairs Minister want to kill rural Alberta. We don't know. I don't think they would agree with that, but they will kill rural Alberta, might be a better term. I'm not sure. I don't want to really say things that we don't really know are true. We don't know the motivation why it's there. Michaela is Medicine Hat, Brooks Medicine Hat, not Brooks Strathmore on the last statement. And that's just what I picked up as we went through it. Has everybody got it? Because Kevin, I think if I'm right, you may have missed the one where you say that CNRL has requested a 30% reduction. For 5 years in a row now, and their request has been across the board from the lowest mill rate right up to the highest. I don't. For those of us who don't have it written out or can't see it, that's in there also. Otherwise, we can argue it back and forth the more we want, but I think you get it in, nobody reads it, and this kind of gives the right. To me, it's kind of the right length because it's probably covered all the main points that I can see. Thank you.
Thanks, Clarence. Kevin, on the top of the second page, whereas the province has now completed a full, open, and transparent review of oil and gas assessments in Alberta and across Canada, I think we should mention that a full assessment or review, I should say, hasn't been done since 2005. That's accurate, I believe. So it would be 15 years. However, we want to say that. But Michaela mentioned 20 years a couple of times yesterday, and I think we need to be accurate. I believe it was 2005. And I think that's important. I guess, is this something that would be, you thinking published? Like this would be something that would go in newspapers and on our website?
Certainly council's call, I think, on that. I wanted to put it together in a format that it could be. As I mentioned to start with, it needs to be edited. It was put together in short order, so I'm not sure why I was thinking Strathmore this morning, but I know it's an act. Anyway, so yeah, we'll have to go through and tweak it, but if this is how we'd like to release it, then it could be released in its format, and we don't need to do much more other than maybe address a letter, please find attached, or whatever. So I thought it would be simple and the clearest. And
I like that format. I like it's like bullets. It's short, and yeah, those are just a suggestion. Other comments? Hubie and Brian?
Would this be released to the RMA people as well? All of them?
Like to all the municipalities? Yeah, we've received other, I mean, this could be like a press release, I guess. We've received press releases from a couple of municipalities. There's no reason not to send it around. Brian.
I was just wondering, in your scenarios that you've put together there, those percentages are great, but I look at some of the stuff that Matt does, and he always puts numbers to it. And I think that might be helpful if we're going to do it as a press release, because the average Joe out there with maybe a subdivision that's worth $300,000 might want to know what 475% increase in the taxes looks like. I think it's always helpful for me in trying to understand the percentages versus an actual scenario that is the average scenario for one of our residential ratepayers. I don't want to make it too complicated, but I think those are the kind of things that, you know, somebody looks at that and they say, well, my tax bill last year was $3,000 and it's going to go up to 475%. What is that number going to look like?
Okay.
I had one more question too. You had down there that the growth, talking about the growth, 1% for the county and 3.5% for all municipalities. I don't want you to change it. I just want to know what the difference is between urbans and rurals. Like I think it's important to leave that is the way it is. I was just curious for my own sake what that growth is for urbans versus rurals. You don't have to do it right now, Kevin, whenever you get a chance, please.
Yeah, I'll get that off to you. I've done the rules. It's 3.5, all the municipal districts and counties. So I totaled up their assessment. And 2018 was the numbers that these guys have been using. And then I went back to 2009. So they averaged 3.5 per year on it. I didn't look at the urbans, but I can and get it to you.
That's fine. It's okay. It shows a gap there, and that was all that's important to me. I'm not sure what the urbans, whether that would bring it up or take it down, but I think the fact that there's a difference between what we consider a pretty healthy municipality, which is the County of Newell, is still struggling when you look at the numbers at that 3.5%. Thanks, Kevin.
Other feedback for Kevin? Ellen?
Kevin, great job. Easy to read, easy to understand. Just wondering about one word. Again, that is the second last paragraph. Okay, whereas it appears the Premier of Alberta and Minister of Municipal Affairs want to or will kill rural Alberta by this nonsense cap submission. Should we add the nonsense? Will that be a bit of a negative of a word? Just an observation.
Yeah,
Matt?
I certainly think council can change any of that. I mean, that's my take on it. And like Clarence had mentioned, we probably might want to remove that because it's making a statement that it appears that they want to kill rural Alberta, and it probably shouldn't say that. It probably should say that if it does happen, they probably will kill rural Alberta or something along that line, or just remove it. They're just there for your decision on, and can be changed, deleted, any of it.
And I think if we want to, I mean, we can change nonsense to not accurate or not factual or not validated, or I think Kevin has pointed out there are many errors in the CAP submission that the government seems to be paying attention to versus looking at the RMA for information. Other thoughts? Kelly?
That was my thought, actually. We didn't address the fact that the government did not consulted. We did talk, I guess, through the gag order. Other than that, there was no very little consultation time, that sort of thing. Wondered if we wanted to enhance that a little bit. Otherwise, I'm good with it.
I think, so even if we said that the RMA committee that worked has imposed, because that gag order, I believe, was imposed quite some time ago and just came off the 24th or whenever it was, 31st. Is it just Friday? It seems, must be 24th. So the gag order is off now, but so maybe just to say imposed a gag order on the RMA committee. So the biggest hit, Kevin, is on the pipelines and wells with a little bit on the M&E. And that's why some of the differences in the province show up.
Yeah, very little hit on M&E, but CAP did say in their proposal that they want M&E adjusted the same. So while it's not part of these options to any great degree, they have mentioned it. So, and that's exactly why Wood Buffalo, which has the biggest assessment in Alberta, is not affected, less than 1%, which I say is not affected.
Right. Other thoughts? Scenario is their word too, right? The government's using that word, these 4 scenarios, right?
Yeah, they came in as A through D. I included them as options because that's what I view them as, that they've considered.
Yeah.
But I could drop the option and just say scenarios. 4 scenarios. Might be cleaner.
Kevin, when it says underneath option 4, whereas in most all of the scenarios, pipelines and wells will be fully depreciated to 10% in 16 years. So that means 16 years from now, or they've done that depreciation now, right?
Yeah, they have different illustrations in there. One of the proposals is they start at 25% depreciated for 4 years, and then it kicks in at 5%. Another one goes down 5% per year in 16 years. That's 90%. And then it flattens out. One of the scenarios, there is no land assessment after 16 years. So it changes out there. And I didn't want to get into, their table is fairly detailed. I've summarized it on, but I didn't want to pass that. It was too much information.
There's some numbers people out there. More info available if they want. Other input? So Kevin, your idea, O'Brien?
I don't know. I don't want to take the focus off of this. I guess I was looking at more of a solution. If you were looking at the lobby effort, what could the province or industry or municipalities do to balance that argument that they're making? And I brought it up yesterday. I think you guys it's not new. Is if you owned a $50 million compressor plant in the county of Newell and you paid, I'm not sure if my number's right, let's say you paid $400,000 of taxes on that at 8 mills, and then you go up in some other areas that are 2.5 times that. That's the argument those CAP is making on behalf of those people is, well, it's the same facility. How come we're paying 2.5 times the taxes? What's your solution for that, Kevin? And I guess I don't know what it is, because every municipality has different operating situations. They might have no residential in Opportunity, and that's their only source. I don't know. I have you ever thought about that part of it? Because that's really what it's going to come down to is those CAP companies are coming to government saying, how come the inequity? It's a $50 million facility. It's exactly the same as the one in Patricia, is exactly the same as the one in High Prairie or wherever. Pick a spot, and yet our taxes are 2.5 times.
Yeah, so there's a number of ways, I think, to deal with that. And, one way the province could do is limit how much oil and gas can be charged, limit the mill rate. Because right now, the only limitation is that it has to be 5-to-1, max between residential, and non-res can only be 5 times higher. Those municipalities that had that ratio or more before can't raise non-res rate. They have to raise residential rate until they close that gap. So that could be one place that the province could deal with it. I know with Saskatchewan, they have individual mill rates by municipality. They have a lot more tax tools in Saskatchewan than we do, between base tax, minimum tax, all kinds of mill rate factors they can use, a lot more detail than we can. But they haven't taken away the ability of each municipality to be able to set their mill rates. So there is variations even in Saskatchewan. So I think two things need to happen. One is I think the province needs to go through this and do a detailed assessment analysis, because they've quoted BC in the CAP document and they have quoted Saskatchewan in the CAP document. They need to validate that our assessments are competitive, and then deal with the tax policies and if they need to limit that. Because if I was an oil company, I wouldn't want to be paying 23 mils there and only 8 here, or 5.5 in Cyprus, right? I mean, that's a huge difference, and I get their argument. But we know from CNRL when they've been here, they've been asking us to drop ours 30%. They were to Cyprus and asked them to drop theirs 30%. And somebody that has a 23 mil rate asked them to drop that 30%. Those are two different dollar values. Same principle. But so that's where I would start, was with the assessments to validate them, and then put some tools in place that can limit, possibly how high you can go to an oil company, or what's reasonable.
Thanks, Kevin. That's sort of what I was thinking about too. But you talk about in a much succinct way.
Other comments? Speaking along those lines, though, Brian, should we be offering any solutions? I mean, we've talked about how this is totally property tax. It's not going to help the province of Alberta. Like, they're not getting that money. The oil and gas companies, who knows what they'll do with that money. How it was mentioned yesterday, I think Kevin mentioned that the money should be coming from the Alberta Treasury, not on the backs of municipalities. Maybe that's sort of more of a solution. I don't know if that needs to be worked in. Clarence?
Yeah, and that was kind of my point, that I thought, I don't know if it has to be worked in here or not, but I do believe that low oil and gas prices benefit every single business and individual in Alberta. And that's the argument you have to use to say that it should be coming from Treasury, where it affects everybody. Your argument against it is fact that you are saying that industry, just lost my thought here for a minute. You're saying, the industry is tough. They're not paying their taxes, so we're going to reduce it. Targeting the municipalities have lost that income already. So that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? And an interesting thing from I talked to Al last night was, he says, we dropped that shallow gas thing and none of those companies have yet paid their taxes. Which goes back to the saying that, this hasn't helped at all solve that problem. So if you want to subsidize, make it from Treasury. Don't come from municipalities that are already suffering because they can't pay their taxes. That problem even worse. I mean, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So anyway, I don't know if that has to be in here or not. I'm not hung up on that at all, but I think those are very strong things that you have to hammer home when you start talking with politicians.
Yes, I think that to pretend that taxes are the only problem to do with Alberta oil is inane and insane, because we know that it's a international issue, it's a national issue, it's not, it's the least of a municipal issue. So I'm going to take Kelly and
my thought went to the already lost assessment from a year ago. Should that also be a bullet? Or the regular ratepayer reading this, they likely would not know about that 35% that we have already cut. Just a thought. I'm asking the question.
perhaps. Kevin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to mention, we can mention that in there, although the assessments we're dealing with, that isn't off because we're comparing it to what was submitted from 2018 and back, but we can certainly make mention of that so that people are aware. The only thing I was going to mention, Madam Reeve, is that I heard Cypress County say yesterday that they made a recommendation that assessments be changed to income approach, possibly, and I don't know, I never got into the details of that, whether that makes sense or not. Obviously it makes sense if the oil companies aren't making any money here. I don't know what that means, whether that's a reasonable recommendation or not, because nothing else is income approached, or very little. I guess sometimes you get in commercial assessments of tenants that use an income approach.
Anyone else? Lionel?
Well, it seems to me that we're shooting in the dark here a lot. Not having a clear indication of why they're doing this. Purpose. We have a kind of a difficult argument not having that information. And Michaela didn't have it either. We talked about her the other day. And it isn't just because they haven't reviewed the assessment for 15 years. I mean, it's more than that. It almost seems to me like it's an attempt to shift some capital from municipal reserves to basically oil and gas. And one way to do that without getting too dirty is doing exactly what they're doing. Because we're going to be forced to dip into our reserves, our budget, and that money will basically wind up in the hands of the gas companies. You have to remember that a number of these companies have a lot of foreign ownership also. So if the government dips into the treasury to help, they're basically helping foreign ownership also. It would not go over very well with the public. So there's another angle that I don't think discussed. How we need to get some information from the government as to why they're doing it.
That's a good thought, Lionel, that whereas municipalities do not understand. Yeah, I don't know how it could be said, but just doesn't seem to make sense in any way. Seeing no more hands, Kevin, your thought is to sort of go back through and add and change and fix a little and send it back out to us, or what?
Yeah, I think today we should probably pass the resolution part of whatever we're going to say, and then I can tweak the whereases and send it out. We can agree on that, and within the next day or so, get it off, because I don't want to wait. They've given us a short window to provide comments on this. And ours isn't a templated approach. As you can see, everybody else is kind of using the template that RMA did. I've taken a different approach so that we're dealing with ours uniquely and specific to our situation.
Absolutely. So therefore be it resolved that the Premier of Alberta, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and the Brooks Medicine Hat MLA be notified that the County of Newell is adamantly opposed to all 4 scenarios presented by the Government of Alberta in regards to the, is it called the tax assessment review or rate review or whatever? Anne-Marie?
I'm okay with you just fixing it, and it doesn't have to come back to me for approval. I think you got the general gist of what we want in there, and go ahead and send it off as quickly as you can.
That's probably a good idea, because once it gets sent back, it makes us all crazy. Brian, Lionel. Oh. Lionel.
I agree with you, Anne-Marie. And so I would be willing to make the motion, Kevin, for you to go ahead and tweak what you need to and send this off.
Okay. Seeing no discussion on that motion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Wayne, were you waving at me like you had a question? No?
Molly, Clarence is gone from my screen. I don't know if you can see him, so I don't know how he voted.
Yeah, he's
That's
gone
it.
too.
Oh,
He was
dear.
outnumbered anyway.
Clarence, where are you? Can you hear us? Well, I see it. He's up here on mine. There he is. His face is back, his smiling face. Can we hear you?
Like everyone else.
You're fine with what we just
I'm
decided?
fine. But I would like to have a bit more discussion on the whole thing and what else we should be doing.
Okay.
That's fair. So did you want that discussion to carry on, Clarence? Or at a later date, or you're thinking now?
Well, I could, because I did talk to Al Kenmare last night, and just a few things that I did learn. Some will make you even think, well, what really is going on? But that's nothing new with this whole scenario. They do have a meeting with Minister Madhu on the 27th. They're also trying to get a meeting with the Premier. We should be aware that this discussion about some of this stuff was going on well before the election ever happened. I've already mentioned the stats on gas and the payment of taxes, that it really hasn't made any effect whatsoever. Al was saying that they've, well, of course, he's been on the hot seat, and they thought that they had some pretty good people on the committee, but a lot of the criticism is that there were no elected people there. I kind of said to him, well, you probably should have both. I know we have different opinions on those people that are there. I don't know them, but Kevin does. He mentioned he should have a phone call with Kevin. So I said to him, well, if you want to use Kevin, we'll give you to him for as much as you want. And I said, and he knew we were having a council meeting today, so I said, well, I can pretty well say that, but I can't say it for the council meeting. And he thanked me for that, because I think though he was pleased with the people he had there, he wasn't pleased with the result. Also know that not have even been in on the discussions without the gag order. And that's why the minute it was lifted, we got the information. They just kept working on trying to do it. I don't think we should be criticizing them much. I mean, they're on the same side as we should try to be working with them as much as possible. If council is okay and if our CAO is okay, I think we should make a decision to say we may our CAO for as much as they want. I think they need some help. And I couldn't think of a better person to help them. It was also interesting to hear him say that when they brought it out, only 4 ministers knew about it. And I don't know what that tells us, but that probably explains why the Minister of Agriculture didn't have a lot to say. And what that means, I have no idea. I don't even want to guess. But it certainly doesn't sound like it was debated to any length. That's about all I got from Al. I had a guy at the door just as, of course, in the middle of the conversation, so we kind of had to cut it off. But yeah, I certainly would like to have Kevin's opinion and his opinion on the fact that maybe we should have our CAO get a little more involved, and if can use that, we're just fine with that. As far that's about all, Molly.
Thanks, Clarence. Wayne? You turned your mic on.
I agree with Clarence 100%. It's on. Okay, I agree with Clarence 100%. There's nobody that I can imagine knows more about this than Kevin. He's a real expert on it. Another thing is, really think we should try and start a media campaign. Let the rest of the province know what the heck is going on here, because this is going to be devastating to the rural if any of this comes through. And I think the residents of rural Alberta have to be informed about this. And they got to go to their MLAs, and there's a lot of them, and just about all UCP. So let's get up. I think we have to start putting scenarios together and get them in the papers and on social media and all this other stuff, because we got to get this out. And the gag order's off now, so let's go for it.
Kevin, you're willing to, if RMA wants some help with this, I'm sure you're willing to be a numbers guy.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't know what they talked about behind the scenes with their committee. I'm not apprised of that, so maybe they've discussed it all and they don't need any help. Where I can help them is with the data and validating our information or another municipality or that kind of stuff. That's where I can help them, as well as maybe get around areas where they haven't thought about things, you know. So I would be more than happy to help any of them at any given time. The one thing I forgot to mention as I was thinking about it is I didn't put potential impacts to the city of Brooks or anybody else, because the Newell Foundation assessment, the different things that are funded, obviously it's going to be a shift because if our assessments drops down to that 2.8 billion from 4.2, that's impacting all partnerships too, right? So I didn't put anything on that, but.
Clarence?
Yeah, part of my discussion was also with Al about the cap numbers and I asked him about how valid they were, and I don't think they really looked at them really that closely. He was silent on it about, so I think that's definitely something that to make sure that they are aware of. There was one other thing, and now it's just slipped my mind. It'll come back to me.
Well, it's quite incredible that the government is seemingly focusing on the cap numbers, the cap information. So that definitely should be validated. All right. So as far as the thing that the whereas paper, that could be, I know that I believe we haven't picked up our mail, but the bulletin's front page story is about this week, is it not? For those of you who've seen the bulletin, yes. And so I think we should make sure that we can continue to get something in the newspapers and the Bazano Times as well, the bulletin on our website, which also should have numbers, MLA phone numbers and Premier Kenny's address and any information that would encourage people, as well as our own if we need to talk to people about this. But we should just sort of continue to keep it going out, updating as we learn things. And if we have meetings with MLAs or find out other information, or just every week, all the time as much as we can, just keep the info flowing. Kelly.
So, Madam Reeve, I was unclear. do we need a motion to for Kevin to make himself available to RMA, or just our conversation? Is that clear enough?
I'm not clear either. Kevin, I'll refer back to you. Is direction good enough?
Yeah, direction is fine. It's if council split on it, then obviously you should have a motion so it's clear, right? But I'm
Okay.
happy.
Let's do a motion, Kelly. So
I would be happy to make that motion.
and that motion would be that Kevin be made available to RMA if they wish his input, Clarence, something like that.
Well, that would be great. And I think, Molly, that you were planning on calling Al too. Maybe you should bring that message. I wouldn't mind bringing it, but I think bringing it from two different people is great.
Okay.
And you are the Reeve, by the way.
I've forgotten. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Yes, I can call Al and give him that message personally from our council. And I also plan to speak to Nate Horner, who is the caucus chair in the south here. I know he's moving around, being asked to be in a lot of places, and I would like to get his take on where things are at with this as well.
Molly, I think you should suggest to him that Al should give Kevin a call so that they get an understanding of what RMA needs, and also Kevin can give him an understanding of what we think should be being said.
Yeah.
So, but I think it is important that call be from them to Kevin.
Absolutely.
So that there's no miscommunication between those people.
No, that's good. All right. Wayne.
Another thing when we're talking media, maybe we could put some scenarios together to inform people what their outlook would be if this goes through. Like, if someone has a house that they're paying $3,000 a month now for, what would they possibly look at in the future for residential taxes? And also, and do this, say, once a week, just to get people understanding how what is possible if this goes through, because this is serious to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's good, and that's not a difficult sort of, and it's real then. People don't understand taxation that well. I mean, but they do understand if you own a house and you pay this much money in 2020 for that home and yard in the county of Newell, on a farm or an acreage, whatever, this is how much money we would have to charge you if we lose this. I think things like that, as Brian pointed out, are much more concrete to people. Kelly.
And just so everybody knows, I have shared with my email address listing, mostly Bizano Ag Society people, the radio discussion that Carolyn was interviewed on. I thought that was a good introduction to the situation. That might be something that others want to do. And then when they see it in the paper, it'll be renewed, it'll be brand new. Just a thought.
Yeah. Not a bad thought at all. Just more information for people. What else? Did you all watch our TV interview on chat? No, I'll send you the link. It's pretty calm compared to Carolyn. And some of you who were there know all that was said, and I think Alex caught it pretty well. Yeah, I can do that. Tracy?
The radio interview that you mentioned with Carolyn, is that like, if you tell somebody go Google this, they'll find it, or like how do we suggest, can people still hear it?
Yeah, Kevin sent a link.
Okay.
You can just.
That's the same one you're talking about.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, sorry, I thought there was another one. Sorry, thank you.
No problem.
And just so you know, I didn't forward Kevin's conversation in the email. I just forwarded that link to the Ag Society people.
Yeah.
Because the conversation was just to us. But the link I thought was a good introduction to the horrible situation.
Yes, it is a good introduction.
I got a question for Clarence. Is that Ryan Jesperson? Is that the guy that does the flames with that loud voice? You know?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know.
Okay. He sure looks like the fellow that does the flames games.
Could be.
All I know about him is he sometimes does when Danielle Smith is away, or if he goes on holidays, they do a joint telecast for a radio cast, I guess it is, for the province. The two radio stations, Calgary and Edmonton, work together. Okay, we'll move on. And I think we have to move in camera for a land issue. Anne Marie will move us in camera. All in favor?